Hello and welcome to this short video presentation to take a look at the end-to-end payables process using B4B for Infor SunSystems. During this demonstration I will take you through the payment run in SunSystems to generate a batch of payments that we will then process through B4B to create a bank file ready for upload to your banking platform. Finally, we'll create a batch of remittances to be emailed out to the creditors to notify them of the payments that have been made. Looking at the data flow through B4B, we can see the process starts with the native payment run functionality in SunSystems to select invoices that are due for payment and to then post those payments in the ledger. We will then process those payments through B4B, validating and matching them to a set of bank details maintained in the application and then creating a bank file in the formats required by the bank of use. The bank file is then uploaded to your online banking platform for payment approval and execution of the funds transfer. We can then look at using the remittance capabilities in B4B to create a batch of remittance documents to be emailed out to the recipients of the payments. So here we're going to start the payment run process within SunSystems. So I'm going to fire up the payment run function. I've got a number of payment profiles here to select transactions based on allocation marker, due dates, currency and so on. So first up I'm going to run this BACS payment profile, which is looking for GBP payments. So normal process, we would set post transactions to no to produce an expected payment report, and then once that's been reviewed and signed off, then we can go ahead and post the transactions. And it's really important at this point that we generate the batch of payments correctly and we select all the invoices that we want to pay, because then of course we're posting those transactions into the ledger at this time, and it's that batch of payments that will then drive through B4B and ultimately the remittances as well. So I've already reviewed my batch. I'm going to go ahead and post this batch of payments. I'm just going to give it a reference and OK. So we'll go ahead and post. So standard functionality in SunSystems to generate the batch of invoices that we want to pay, and here we can see our payment run listing from the process, detailing me here the individual invoices that have been settled as part of this payment run. And at the bottom of this report we can see here we've got 10 payments for around 114,000 GBP. So I'm going to leave this report open, we'll refer back to this later. And now I'm going to log into B4B. So when launching B4B, we can set this to use Windows authentication. I'm using named authentication here so that I can log in as different users and demonstrate some of the different roles that we can enforce using the security model within B4B. So we can easily set up different groups, different roles in the application to enforce segregation of duties if required. So I'm going to log in as my payables user. And here we're taken into the B4B main menu, looking at the rich client, the desktop version at the moment. And the menu here is all controlled by the user's role. So what permissions they have, what functions they can access, and also what business units and bank formats they can use. So we're going to go ahead and validate the batch of payments that we've just posted in SunSystems. And you'll see here that our BACS payment profile is immediately available to B4B. So there is no need to pass any intermediary file from Sun into B4B, and there's no need to build and maintain any complex interfaces. This is deeply integrated directly into the SunSystems database itself. So when I go ahead and select the BACS payment profile here, then B4B is now validating this batch of payments based on the setup for this business unit and linking those payments to a set of bank details for the creditors and for the payment account as well. And you can see in the lower pane, we can then get a full listing, a full detail of the transactions that have been processed as part of this payment run. So on the first tab here, on the payment details tab, we're seeing a breakdown of the individual invoices that were actually settled during that payment run. So this is a transaction listing of all of those payments that have been made. And we can see here that this one is highlighted in red. It has errors, there's something wrong with this transaction. So I'll have a look at this in a minute. If we move into the payment summary tab, then this is what B4B is going to do with those payments based on the setup at the supplier bank detail level. And ultimately here we can see that the payment method is to pay by account, and this is the default. It means we're going to consolidate the invoices per supplier to then produce one bank payment for the total amount we're paying by creditor. There is an option within B4B at a supplier level and also at the system level. We can change the pay by method to be by reference, so each individual invoice would generate a separate bank payment instruction if needed. But here we can see there's something wrong, and if we move into the payment errors tab, we can see exactly the nature of that error. So we're trying to make a payment here to Thompson's International in GBP sterling, but we can't find the target bank account details for that creditor. So the bank details are missing within B4B. So we're going to go and fix that up before we proceed to ensure that all of the payments that were posted in SunSystems will be successfully included in our bank file. So I'm going to log in here as a different user. So this user has a different role in the application, so a different set of options on the menu. And here you can see that this user's role is purely around maintaining the bank details, the static reference data within B4B. And we're going to have a look at the target bank details here to add in the missing information for that particular creditor. For this demonstration, I'm using this AIB multi-currency bulk payments format. Within B4B, we have over 400 formats in the library. And of course, each and every bank format is different. The key differences are around the bank detail requirements and of course the output file that is going to be created. So what we have here is a bank detail function that's tailored for the particular bank format that's being used to ensure that the data that's entered is validated correctly as per the bank requirements, and of course that we gather all the information that we need to actually execute that bank payment. And this particular format is multifunctional in that it can do different payment types. So we can see it can do a SEPA transfer or a non-SEPA transfer. So I'm going to go ahead and create my new bank account record in here for that 81005 supplier. And I'm going to add in a subcode, a bank ID, saying this is their GBP bank detail record. And you can see here it's returned the name directly from the SunSystems chart of account record. So now when we select the payment type, we'll see here that the form changes based on the validation requirements of that payment type. So I'm going to create a non-SEPA bank account record for this creditor, and I'm going to put in some bank details, and you can see how the information is validated on input. So when we go into the second tab, the payments and usage, well, for this particular creditor, I'm going to be paying them in GBP, so I'm going to match this bank detail to the GBP payment that was posted, and then I'm ultimately going to write GBP into my bank file as the payment currency. We've got some other control options here, and then finally the actual supplier name, the creditor name. So now we've satisfied the validation requirements for this particular format. I can go ahead and save the changes into the database, and you'll see here it's now triggering the approval workflow within B4B. So this is an optional approval stage that we can enable at a business unit level to force an approval around changes to what is very sensitive data that's stored in the database. So I can put in here a message, a reason as to why I'm making this change. And then on hitting OK, it's going to create that record in the database. However, we can see here the status is pending approval. So our approver needs to go in and review these changes. And as part of the approval workflow, we can also enable an email alert to automatically notify the designated approver or approvers of the pending change request. So of course, I cannot make a payment to this creditor until those changes have been reviewed and approved. So I'm going to launch B4B and log in as a different user. So I'm going to log in here as my bank detail approver. And again, this particular user has access to different functions, a different role within the application. So we can view bank details. So I can come in here and have a look at the record that's pending my approval. And then I can move into the approval portal to then review the data that I'm actually going to be approving. So we can see here on the top grid, we get a summary of the record that's been changed, and then in the lower grid we're seeing the full order of that change, so the old values and the new values. Obviously this was an insertion by this particular user. So now when I go ahead and approve, a number of things will happen. We can automatically email the originator of the change to notify them that that record has been approved, the record's been unlocked, and it can now be used in a payment run. And at this point we can also optionally invoke a transfer of the approved bank details back into SunSystems, so to maintain a synchronized set of data for reference and reporting purposes in SunSystems. So if we go back into SunSystems and have a look at the bank detail function for this creditor, we can see that at the moment there is no bank details within the SunSystems database. So if I go ahead and approve the changes, then it's at this point it's unlocking that record, it's clearing it from my approval grid, sending an email to the originator to notify them that that has been approved. And we can see here that that approved record has been automatically updated within the SunSystems database. And here we can also include some comments saying exactly who approved it and when. So very nice real-time synchronization here between B4B and SunSystems, should you require a record of the details within SunSystems as well. Okay, so let's log back in as our payables user, and we can now validate that batch of payments again. So I'm going to click on my BACS profile, and now we can see here that no errors were encountered. So there's nothing on the payment errors and nothing highlighted as being a problem. And we can see down here that B4B is going to process 10 payments by account, by creditor, and the total amount here is 114,000, which of course should match back to what we originally posted within our payment run in SunSystems. So if we're keeping a paper trail, an audit of this payment run, then we can print out or store the payment run report. And then here in B4B, we can also produce a payment listing. And then from here, from the preview, we can print, we can store, we could even email this report if needed. Okay, and here's our payment detail report, showing us exactly the invoices, the creditors that have been paid, the payment amounts and currencies. And at the bottom here, we are seeing our totals of 10 payments, which matches exactly what we posted in SunSystems. So we've got some options of exporting documents, emailing, saving, and we can also save this directly into the database as well. So we can save the report so that it can be reprinted at a later time if needed. So now that we've successfully validated our batch of payments and we've corrected any errors, all of the totals match with what we posted in SunSystems, we can now continue the processing of this batch. So here we would go ahead and save the valid payments into the bank format area, ready for inclusion in the bank file itself. There are some other options here. You can see we can remove selected lines from B4B. So this allows us to remove payments or invoices from the B4B batch if they needed to be removed or withheld for some reason. If we do choose to remove any transactions from B4B, then we would have to make a manual correction in SunSystems to show that those payments hadn't actually been made, they hadn't been included within the bank file. And there's also an option here to remove the entire payment run from B4B. So we could delete this entire batch, go back into SunSystems, reverse the entire payment run and start the process again. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and save my payments into the bank formatter, ready for inclusion in the bank file. So we save for format processing, and we can see that clears the validate payments grid, and we get a message along the bottom saying that the payments have been successfully saved into the bank formatter. So the final piece for the payables user is to create the bank file itself. So if we move into the create bank file function, we'll see here all of the transactions that we've successfully validated, ready for inclusion in our bank file. So we need to put in some runtime parameters around this particular bank file creation. Again, these parameters are specific to the bank format that is being used. So we might see different runtime parameters for different bank formats. So for this particular format, we're going to put in our execution date to instruct the bank as to when these payments should be processed. We can include a payment description in the bank file, and the description is controlled by this reason code parameter, where we can select different options to construct that payment description that's going to be passed through the banking system and ultimately onto the beneficiary's bank statement. So here you can see different options on how we might want to construct that payment description. I'm just going to use here a fixed text and put in my company name. We're going to give this a file name. You can see this format is going to produce an XML file. So this was a GBP batch that I posted on PK1. I can then give it some message indicator, some payment ID, and then whether I want batch booking. So these are all format specific runtime parameters for this particular bank file format. So we're now ready to go ahead and create the bank file. There is another option here at create bank file where we can exclude payments from this bank file creation. If we choose to exclude, then effectively we're going to withhold a payment. So we'll roll it back up into the validate payment function, and there we can hold on to that payment or optionally remove that completely from B4B and then make a correction within SunSystems. So I'm going to go ahead and create my bank file. So as part of that bank file creation, you can see we can also create a final report from B4B to detail the actual transactions that have been included within this particular payment file. So we can see the creditor details, the bank account details that we're actually paying to, the account we paid from, and of course the invoices and payment values. If we scroll down to the bottom, we can see here that there's a total of 10 payments for 114,000. Again, that's going to match back to what we posted in SunSystems. And then here at the bottom of the report is showing us our file was successfully created in the designated output folder. So now that file has been created, the next step would be then to go onto your online banking platform, import that bank file. The import process will validate the layout and the content of the file, and then present those transactions to the final payment authorizers, who will review and then authorize the payments to then instruct the execution of the actual funds transfer. So now we've paid our creditors using an electronic payment, so we can now also notify those creditors of the invoices that have been paid via an emailed remittance document. So here you can see under the same processing menu, our payables user also has access to the remittance function. And within the remittance function, our BACS profile is sitting here ready to be processed, ready for remittances to be sent out to all of these creditors to notify them of the payments that we settled. At the bottom of the form, we can see here is our runtime parameters. These have been set by default based on the system setup. So we can set defaults here at a system level for each business unit, or even at a profile level, to save us having to rekey all of this information each time we process a remittance batch. If I highlight the transactions within the batch, it then enables our reporting options here at the top. So the first report we would want to have a look at is the account and email report. This produces a summary listing showing us the payments, the remittances that are going to be processed. And most importantly, are there email addresses for the recipients here? This is being read from the supplier record within SunSystems, and at a glance by looking at this report we can see if those remittances are going to be successfully sent to the correct contacts at the supplier. If there are missing email addresses, then we can go back into SunSystems, add in that missing email information, and then run this report again so that we can then see that all of those remittances will be successfully emailed. There are options where we can set the remittance to be automatically printed on our default printer if no email address exists within SunSystems. We can also preview the batch, and here when previewing we're going to have a look at the actual remittance document, and this is an example document that I've created using the powerful report designer that's included within B4B. So we can create a custom PDF remittance document based on your business requirements to ensure that the recipient is notified of all the information that they need to know. So primarily here the dates, the references, descriptions, and of course the values and currencies. We can also pull additional information directly from the SunSystems database onto the remittance, so name and contact and address details, and also bank details from the SunSystems bank detail function if needed. So once we've previewed the reports, it's then a simple case of processing the batch and simply sending the emails. And this is going to then generate an email for each of those recipients and attach the remittance document to it. So now on completion of the process, we can see that the remittance function has now been cleared, and those remittance documents have been emailed out based on the settings, and all of that information has now been moved into the archive area within the application. So if I change the date range here and then set this box to show sent remittances, I can then see here the batch of remittances that we've just processed. So if I need to review or resend a remittance document, then I can very easily select an individual transaction, an individual payment from the batch, and then preview that again, and then either print this from here, email it from here, or email it again directly here from the remittance function. So full access to a full archive of all of the remittances that have been sent, that allows us to resend those at any time if needed. So that completes the payables process within B4B. We used the standard SunSystems payment run function to generate a batch of payments. We validated those payments through B4B, matching them to a set of bank details for each of our suppliers, created a bank file in the required bank format, and then finally sent a batch of remittances to notify the creditor of the payment that had been made. And here, if we have a look at one of those emails, you can see the email subject line and body text, and then here the remittance document attached as a PDF document. Okay, so to finish off here, I'm just going to run through this payment process again. So I'm going to post a new payment run using a different profile. So a SEPA payment profile this time, that's going to be selecting euro payments. I just wanted to run through this so that I can then demonstrate the payables functions through the web interface as well from B4B. So again, I'm using the Sun payment run here to generate our batch of euro payments. And we can see here as part of that, a number of euro invoices have been settled. So again, we've got 10 euro invoices for around 104,000. So this time I'm going to launch the B4B web application in my browser to demonstrate how we can also access those key payables functions through our web browser. So here's B4B in the web. I'm going to log in as my payables user. The web portal also supports Windows authentication, so we could have single sign-on into the web interface as well. And when logging into the web portal, the same security model is applied, so the user has access to the same functions and the same actions as they would within the rich client version. Now, not all functions are available within the web portal, but the key functions for processing payments, for maintaining bank details, approving changes to those bank details, and processing the remittances are all available within the web. So all of those everyday functions for that end-to-end payables processing are available through the web browser. So we posted our payments in SunSystems. The next thing here we're going to do is validate that batch of payments. And here is our SEPA batch available to B4B immediately. So now we can validate the batch within B4B. So here we've got the same visibility where we can see payment details, our payment summary, showing us here our transaction amount. So 10 payments, 104,000. And in this case, there were no errors to consider. So we could also preview our report from here as well, print the report directly from the web browser. And we've got our same functions, so save for format processing, remove selected lines, or remove the payment run. So I'm going to go ahead and save my payments. And you can see here they've been successfully saved into the bank formatter, AIBCT. So the user can then move into the create bank file function. And it's here that we're going to see the same runtime parameters we saw within the rich client desktop version. So I'm going to enter the same details. I'm going to give this a file name and my message ID, and finally batch booking. And then create my bank file. So in terms of functionality, it's exactly the same as we've seen within the desktop version. And you can see here how quick and easy it is for the end user to post those payments, validate the batch, and create the bank file. So we also get our reporting capabilities through the browser. So here is our bank file report that was created, and we can see that there was 10 SEPA euro payments for 104,000, and our file was successfully created. So our file was successfully created. The last piece here we can also look at through the web portal is to process our remittances. So here is our batch of SEPA remittances, and it's a simple case of selecting them all. And then here we can preview those remittances. And we could preview our account and email report, and then finally send out those remittances directly here from the web browser. So the same functionality is available to us through the web portal for validating payments, creating files, processing remittances, and then obviously also for maintaining that static reference data as well. So this now concludes this demonstration of B4B for Infor SunSystems. If you require any further information on B4B or any of our other products, then please visit our website at www.professionaladvantage.co.uk.